Welcome to Felka Platek, artist and companion of the painter Felix Nussbaum, in our series Flight or Fight, Stories of Artists Under Repression. I'm Rachel Stern, Executive Director of the Fritz Ascher Society for Persecuted, Ostracized, and Banned Art based in New York. Today I'm honored to introduce Sibylle Schwetter, who is an art historian and curator of the Felix Nussbaum collection at the Felix Nussbaum House in Osnabrück. She has devoted herself to the life and work of the German Jewish painter Felix Nussbaum, who lived in Osnabrück from 1904 until 1944, until he was killed in 1944 in Auschwitz. For more than 20 years and is in charge of the artist catalog Raisonné. The scientific research project Online Catalog Raisonné Felix Nussbaum is due to be published in a revised form in 2025. In addition to managing the artist's collection and archive, she curates exhibitions on Felix Nussbaum and classical modern art, such as Seeing Nussbaum Differently, New Perspectives on the Felix Nussbaum collection in 2020, and Danse Macabre, Dance and Death in the Art of the Early 20th Century in 2017, or most recently, together with Mechthild Achtelwilm and Alejandro Perdomo Daniels, hashtag Nicht müde werden, Felix Nussbaum and Artistic Resistance Today, 2023-24. In 2024, she was a short-term fellow at the Villa Massimo in Rome. After her presentation, there will be time for Q&A, so please post your questions. Welcome, Sibylle Schwetter.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Rachel Stern, for the kind introduction. Yes, I'm honored and very pleased to be invited to present Felka Platek's life and work today. Shall we start with the presentation? So, okay, I will give the... Just a second. Okay, thank you very much. So, well, yes, Felka Platek, as Rachel Stern said, is mostly known to us as a companion and wife of the painter Felix Nussbaum. But in contrast to Nussbaum, who left behind more than 250 works, only 30 works of her have survived. Most of them, exactly 28, are in the Nussbaum collection in Osnabrück. And this year, we celebrate the 125th birthday of Felka Platek and show a large scale of her works from our collection at the Felix Nussbaum House until May 11 next year, so 2025. Well, anyhow, this small scale of her work makes it difficult to understand her artistic work and ambitions. But not only this, our knowledge of her person and her biography is, first of all, based on the research into Felix Nussbaum. The researcher's interest in the very beginning, which is in the 1970s, goes hand in hand with the perspective of contemporary witnesses who perceived her primarily as Nussbaum's wife and not as an artist. So, for example, Platek is repeatedly described as a motherly person. It's said that she did the housework and put up with Nussbaum's moods. It's also reported that she supported him in his artistic ambitions while she subordinated herself artistically. Thus, the statements of contemporary witnesses reflect not least the traditional role models of women and shape our image of her. But she was also an artist. She educated herself as such and worked her entire life, which, like Nussbaum's, was characterized by exile, expulsion, and persecution. So in my lecture, I would therefore like to introduce her biography and her work on the basis of the little we know. Even a look at her origins and artistic beginnings is very interesting, even though we know very little. Felka Platek was born on January the 3rd in 1899 in Warsaw and grew up in a simple, perhaps even poor family conditions. It seems that her father, Leon Platek, was a medding cobbler, so the parents belonged to the lower artisan class. We assume that she moved to Berlin at the beginning of the 1920s. However, we know nothing about the circumstances and motives behind her move to Berlin. Perhaps it was an attempt to escape the insecure circumstances and difficult conditions in Poland and Warsaw at that time. But what we do know is that in 1924, she was a student at the Private Studienateliers, private study studios in Berlin, the so-called Levin-Funke-Schule. We also know that she was a student in the class of the German artist Ludwig Meitner. Here, on the photo seen standing on the left together with a group of students. We do not know what financial resources she had to enable her to study at the Levin-Funke School, but it is clear that a woman, and also without financial background, it was still a remarkable step to try to become an artist in the 1920s. This also has to do with the respect for women as artists and the opportunities for professional training. Previously, academies were, with a few exceptions, reserved for men only. It was only with the equal status of men and women in the Weimar Constitution of 1919 that art academies opened up to female students in 1920s. Private art schools, such as the Levin-Funke School, filled this gap. So against this background, we must assume that Felka Platek is endowed with self-confidence and bravery. On the photography here shown, it might be that Felka Platek is the person on the front right, sitting on the ground. The woman sitting next to Ludwig Meitner is her girlfriend, Else Meyer, and later wife, known as Else Meitner. Felka Platek and Felix Nussbaum, who studied together at the Levin-Funke School at 1924, also met here and later married in exile in 1937. So let's come to Platek works. The earliest work by her that we know today are from 1927. These graphics are, like nearly all of the surviving works, made on paper, mostly in tempera and gouache. The nude study and the figure of the man in the oriental fits look like study works that were probably created in the Levin-Funke School. They already make it clear that Felka Platek completed basic academic training and that she tested and mastered proportion and figurative movement. They also give an impression of her artistic signature, a strong and confident brush stroke in which the influence of her teacher Ludwig Meitner can be made out. In addition to these works, two portraits in oil and tempera from 1927 have survived. The women's hairstyles and clothing correspond to the type of the modern woman of the 1920s. But Felka is not especially interested in a representative depiction of the type. Rather, these are more private, intimate views of the women. Their gaze is directed out of the pictorial space so that they are not into dialogue with the viewer, and their expression has something calm and withdrawn about it. In general, portraits play a special role among the few surviving works by Platek. So almost half of the approximately 30 known works are portraits. And this genre runs through almost all of her work from 1927 to 1942. Platek also portrayed Fritz Steinfeld, a close friend of Felix Nussbaum. Steinfeld himself mentioned it in his memories, and he remembers that he preferred Felka's portrait as, in his words, the best academy, and this in contrary to the portrait by Felix Nussbaum, in which Steinfeld found himself more funny than good. Unfortunately, both works are lost. In addition to self-portraits and several portraits of unknown persons, we can assume that there must have been commissioned portraits by Felka Platek. and it is possible that she was already earning money with it in the years in Berlin. So far, we also know nothing about her ambitions as an independent artist and about her presence in the Berlin art scene. For example, in regard to her involvement in exhibitions, we know of only one participation in a group show. She is mentioned in a brief review of an exhibition in 1931 at the Galerie Hess und Rom. It was an exhibition for the benefit of the Kinderhilfswerk, so a child welfare organization. Platek participated with, I quote, beautifully perceived landscapes. But again, these works have not survived. So we only know of 6 works from the years in Berlin up to 1932. But we know that Platek worked in a variety of genres, which is portrait, figure, landscape, and also still life. Well, why has so little survived from these early creative years in Berlin? Platek's works were stored in a studio apartment in Berlin, which she shared with Felix Nussbaum. At the end of 1932, they traveled to Rome, as Nussbaum has been awarded a study visit to the Villa Massimo. During this time, there was a fire in the Berlin apartment and almost everything was destroyed. In his memories, Steinfeld, Nussbaum's friend I mentioned before, quotes a letter that Nussbaum sent him from Rome. I quote, "Here now are all Felka's belongings, all her watercolors and paintings, her entire fortune, if you should call it that, bed sheets, feather beds, and so much. Letters collected from more than 10 years, writings, everything is gone. Photos in all the books. Dear Felka now says, now I'm really burnt down. Her only possessions are her 2 small suitcases here." End quote. This suggests that Platek had a kind of library of books and maybe also writings of her own. It is an interesting question how the relationship between Platek and Nussbaum was as an artistic couple and what image Nussbaum had of her as an artist. Steinfeld, again, reports that on the one hand, Platek ran the household and patiently compensated for Felix Nussbaum's craziness, as he says. On the other hand, Steinfeld wrote in his memories, Nussbaum would have taken her as a critic of his work seriously and appreciated her a lot. Nussbaum's perception of his girlfriend as an artist is conveyed by a portrait of Felka Platek, which he painted of her. This work is lost today, but we know it from an article in a journal in which it is described as the Jewish painter Felka Platek. Her profession as an artist is thus explicitly stated in the title. In the portrait, she is depicted as a modern woman with a short haircut and short skirt. She is holding a bouquet of flowers and wearing a top with an eye-catching, naively painted floral pattern. Nevertheless, her wide-legged pose and folded arms make her look self-confident and sovereign. In regard to the article in which Nussbaum is honored as a Jewish painter, the illustrations are worth commenting on. Next to the portrait of Platek, there is a self-portrait of the artist on the left side. On the right, you can see it here, and a portrait of his mother. On the top, you see Rahel Nussbaum. Even if we don't know whether Nussbaum was involved in choosing the illustrations, but the selection is interesting. The relationship between Rahel Nussbaum and Felka Platek was difficult. Rahel Nussbaum rejected Platek as a wife at her son's side. There are several reports that Platek, as a poor woman of Polish origin, had a hard time with her status within the bourgeois Nussbaum family, especially from the mother's family side. But we also know, especially from the memories of Fritz Steinfeld, that Nussbaum criticized the lack of recognition and stood by her side. But his fight for Felka's reputation seems to be mostly in regard to family affairs. In his painting, The Mad Square, here seen in the middle from 1931, his most important and successful work in the Berlin years, Nussbaum includes the portrait of Felka Platek as well. He shows a group of young artists in front of the Berlin Academy of Arts. He leads them by himself. You see him in the white coat in front of the group. The theme of the painting is the protest of the young generation against the rejection by the established generation of academics. Almost all of the paintings carried by the car are Nussbaum's. The portrait of Felka is positioned right in the center of family portraits. A portrait of his parents above and one of his brother and his wife below the portrait of Felka Platek. So I marked it here in the picture and hope you can see what I mean. However, and this is also interesting, Felka is not represented among the young artists themselves, among whom some friends of Nussbaum have been identified. Well, to return to the couple's trip to Rome. While we have some information about Nussbaum as a study guest at the Villa Massimo, we know nothing about Platek's stay. When Nussbaum was expelled from Villa Massimo through no fault of his own in May 1933, they both traveled to the Italian Riviera. As far as we know from the surviving works, here Platek focused, besides some figure and portrait studies, on landscape motifs from Alassio. As you can see here, the three graphics on the left, these includes the graphics both on the coast, LA to the sea, and a landscape scene with Felix Nussbaum painting from behind at the beach. So the couple obviously work together. Also, there are identical motifs in the work of both artists, such as the view of an LA leading to the sea. You see Nussbaum's graphic here on the right. As we will notice with other examples later as well, there are obvious differences between Platek's and Nussbaum's works. Platek is focusing on the landscape motif itself, but Nussbaum is humorously depicting special details in the background. He is also focusing on the people in the water who are swimming and playing, but at the same time, this pleasure life of a summer holiday is kept into a distance to the viewer. Unlike Platek, Nussbaum incorporates a narrative level and creates with his composition a mood of loneliness. Following the Nazi takeover in Germany and the political events that followed, Nussbaum and Platek decided to go into exile in Belgium in 1935. On February the 2nd, they arrived in Ostend on a tourist visa. Shortly after they tried to obtain a residence permit, which was denied. However, they only received a foreigner passport. Here you see Platek's pass, which with the date of issue on November the 16th, 1937, and next to it Nussbaum's with the date of November 16, 1935. These were valid for 6 months only and had to repeatedly renewed. During this time, they lived in boarding houses, traveling around to Ostend, Brussels, and other places. It was an unsettled life of insecurity without permanent residence. From this period, only 5 works by Felka Platek have survived, including these 4 still lifes, which are fish and kitchen still lifes. In the literature on Felka Platek, it was repeatedly emphasized that the choice of subject matter could be seen as an expression of her retreat as an artist. In regard to the difficult circumstances of daily life in exile, it is possible that she got in conflict with her artistic ambitions and that she withdrew to her role as a housewife. Once again, identical motives can be found in the work by Felka Platek and Felix Nussbaum. Here you see the still life with shell and fish by Felka on the left and by Nussbaum on the right. The still lifes differ in regard to some details. In Nussbaum's work, there is, in contrast to Platek's still life, no paper in which the fish were wrapped, nor are there any spatial details like the table or stool and the cupboard in the background. Furthermore, Platek does not depict the small sponge. Nevertheless, it can be assumed that they work together in front of the same arrangement. Also, Nussbaum portrait Felka Platek working on a still life, here seen on the right. In the background, on the wall, we see large format patterns that Nussbaum often used to comment on the unpleasantly decorated rooms at the boarding houses. And another still life of Platek is remarkable. The motif of the skate is an obvious quotation from a painting by the Belgian artist James Ensor, who lived in Ostend, and we know that Nussbaum was in contact with him. We do not know about any contact between Platek and Ensor, but obviously she was familiar with his work as well. On October the 6th in 1937, Platek and Nussbaum married in Brussels and moved into an apartment at Rue Archimede 22. Here, this self-portrait by Platek was created. She depicts herself working at the easel on the balcony. The bright colors of the chalk drawing create a cheerful, at least friendly mood. With this self-portrait, she captures a self-reflective view of herself while the face is shadowed. The dark shadow has something strange. It contrasts with the peaceful atmosphere of the setting and breaks it up. She works this out even more clearly in another self-portrait made in 1940. Before I go into this portrait in more detail, I would like to make a biographical comment. The relationship between Platek and Nussbaum, who were now married, suffered more and more under the increasing political pressure. Contemporary witnesses report that their relationship became increasingly strained. Their efforts to obtain a permanent resident permit failed. Perhaps the marriage and permanent residence at Rue Archimede was also an attempt to improve their chances of obtaining a residence permit. In addition, following the pogrom night in November 1938, Nussbaum was very worried about his parents, who were still in Germany. They tried to travel to Belgium to be with Felix Nussbaum. But as the relationship between Platek and Nussbaum's parents was very difficult, she tried to prevent this. Platek sent anonymous letters to the Belgian authorities. In these letters, she accused a former business partner of Felix Nussbaum of acting as an agent to obtain false visas and residence permits. Felka was interrogated and confessed that the accusations were fictitious. This put her and also the Nussbaum family in serious trouble. Platek was threatened with expulsion. She was only allowed to stay in Brussels because she admitted her guilt. So we have no works from Platek from this time, but the next known works are dated in 1940. And this self-portrait, which I now will return to, is such example. The self-portrait in front of an open window is one of Platek's most remarkable pictures. The face is painted in a dark brown tone, as we have seen in the other self-portrait before as well. Here, her lips are barely visible. The darkness contrasts with the bright colors of blue, yellow, and red of her clothes and the background. The facial expression and the gesture of the right hand in front of the left chest expresses pain and protection. This expressive self-portrait in bright, expressive colors shows a woman marked by suffering. As a free work, this self-portrait is an example of Platek's artistic language and ability. In contrast, there are portraits from 1940 which are commissioned works and differ greatly in their academic painting style. The painting portrait of Mrs. Etienne shows the neighbor at Rue Archimède, with whom Platek had a friendly relationship. This friendship was intensified when Nussbaum, like all male foreigners of German nationality, was arrested by the Belgian authorities during the invasion of the German troops in May 1940 and interned in the Camp Saint-Cyprien in France. Belgium was under German occupation from end of May 1940, and Platek and Mrs. Etienne found familiarity in each other during this time of waiting for their husband's return. The portrait was kept by the Etienne family, together with a work by Nussbaum, which he made after his return from the camp. The classically academic portrait by Platek, which shows Mrs. Etienne as a well-groomed lady in elegant clothing, evidently inspired Nussbaum to create a caricature, whether as a witty commentary or ironic criticism. This is a matter of speculation. Nussbaum's commentary, anyhow, makes obvious that Platek's portrait of Mrs. Etienne shows that her academic skills were above all in keeping with contemporary taste. Platek apparently continued to contribute to the couple's livelihood with commissioned works until 1942. The portrait of Nicolas Hogenes at the age of 2 was probably commissioned with support by Nussbaum's parents in Amsterdam. It is based on a surviving photograph which Platek used almost exactly as a model for the portrait of the young child. Well, we know that Felix Nussbaum was in regular correspondence with his father, who had emigrated to Amsterdam, and pictures were also exchanged between Amsterdam and Brussels until 1942. The transfer was therefore apparently still possible under the German occupation, certainly not without danger. Repression against Jews living in Belgium became increasingly threatening under the German occupation from 1940 onwards. So on December the 23rd in 1940, Nussbaum and Platek were entered in the Jewish register of the city of Brussels. In November 1941, their German citizenship was denied. So from this moment on, they were stateless. The anti-Jewish legislation also came into law in Belgium. We don't know exactly why the couple stayed in Belgium, but contemporary witnesses reported that they preferred to stay in Brussels. For example, Isaac Schenkheim, a survivor who was active in the resistance and helped Jews in hiding, was in contact with Platek and Nussbaum during this time. He reported that he tried to get them false passports, but they refused. Schenkheim remembers that especially Nussbaum was full of fear, and Platek was also physically fragile and ill. Escaping from Belgium did not seem to be an option for either of them. When the deportations began in summer 1942, Platek and Nussbaum decided to go into hiding, which was in Brussels Etterbeek, with Dolf Riedel, a friend of Nussbaum. On October the 24th in 1942, Platek was issued a new passport stamped with red letters, Juif and Jude, as you can see here. The passport was renewed 3 times, the last time on April 24 in 1944. And the address listed is Rue Archimède 22 in Brussels. So in March 1943, Platek and Nussbaum moved back to this address. In order to keep them safe at this place, the owner of the house set up a hiding place at the attic. The last known drawings by Platek were created here. A total of 4 of her still lifes have survived. You see 3 of them on the left. And again, Platek and Nussbaum work together in front of the same arrangement. One example is Nussbaum's Kitchen in Hiding and Platek's Still Life with Agave, which is part of Nussbaum's interior scene. The Still Life with African sculpture is another example. However, these two still lifes of Platek and Nussbaum also reveal the differences in the artistic work of the two artists again. Nussbaum draws the sculpture with almost photorealistic precision and complements the main motive of the sculpture with a drawing in the background, which is reminiscent of Henri Rousseau's jungle motifs. Nussbaum loads the still life with symbolism, while Felka is more focusing on the pure representation of the objects. As I mentioned before, these still lives from 1943, are the last works by Platek we know today. The fact that so few of her works have survived has to do with the loss of her Berlin works, of course. But we must assume that later works from her are also not saved as well. I guess that she also worked much more during the years of exile and in hiding. But only Nussbaum ensured that his works were preserved. In 1942, he gave around 122 paintings to a friend in storage. This was the first estate of his works, which was found in 1959 by his cousin, Auguste Moses Nussbaum. The second large estate of his works was located at Sibylle in the Rue General Gratry in Brussels. Here, Nussbaum probably painted his last, partly large format paintings in oil during the last 10 months before his arrest. The surviving works by Felka Platek also come from Willy Billestraat, but it is not clear how he came into possession of them. It can be assumed that there are more in other works by Platek that were destroyed when the couple was arrested in the Rue Archimede. This was on the night of June 21 in 1944, in their hiding place at the Rue Archimede 22. They were taken to Mechelen, and from this collection camp between Brussels and Antwerp, they were deported to Auschwitz on August the 2nd and murdered there. So I will come to the end. As mentioned at the beginning, research on Felka Platek is still incomplete. Despite the limited knowledge about her life, the following is still obvious. Her life's journey began with a brave goal of becoming a painter in Berlin. And it is remarkable that she continued to work as an artist even during her immigration and until the end in hiding under the threatening circumstances of persecution. Her life and work reflects the fate of a Jewish woman whose artistic ambitions were first broken by political repression and violently ended with her murder in Auschwitz. Well, it would be desirable if research on Felka Platek were intensified and we knew more about her origins and her life. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so very much. It is amazing how many information you were able to find about her work and about how many works you were able to find and how much information you were able to bring together. So thank you so much. Henriette is asking, is there any evidence that she also made more monumental works like her husband, or works that were possibly destroyed?
Yeah, this is really an interesting question I'm asking myself, because I find it interesting that so many graphics are left, but not any paintings. I mean, she was a painter, she painted. Also, I found a few months ago a painting on the art market, which might be, yes, I think it is a painting by Felka Platek. It is a still life, a beautiful still life from 1929, which is a painting in oil. So yeah, it is interesting. Also, Nussbaum mentioned it that she painted in the letter I quoted from Fritz Steinfeld, that there were paintings by her. So I find it interesting that only so little paintings, or so not so much paintings are, except of the commissioned portraits which she made. On the other hand, I'm not sure if she really was an artist who made, I would say, this quality of works like Nussbaum did. I mean, we have the graphics, and we see when we make a compares those that Nussbaum is something did something completely different with a symbolic meaning. So I'm not sure. So this is really a lack of our knowledge today, of course. What was really her artistic, yes, yeah, what was she able really to do as an artist?
Yeah. And David is asking another tough question. Can you estimate how many works of her were lost? Like how much she created?
No, I really we can't we really can't say it. I mean, that's why I quoted the letter from Steinfeld in the Berlin studio while she and Nussbaum were in Rome. Really, nearly everything of her was just lost. It's just a miracle that some works from the Berlin time survived. I can't really, I have no idea how many works she really, I mean, they were arrested in the Rue Archimede. And I think, if I imagine, because we know that they were in hiding in the Rue Archimede. We don't know if they have been there all the time. It might be that they changed hiding places all over the time during the last 2 years. That's possible. We actually don't know it really. But we know that Nussbaum takes care for his works, so they survived in other hiding places. And so it might be that the works Felka did were really just destroyed by the Nazis when they were found in their hiding place. So I can't really answer this question, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
Do you think during the time in Belgium, Nussbaum, or do you know whether he was able to sell any work? Like, did they have an income from the creation of artwork, or
do you mean both of them, or Felker in particular?
Of course, both of them, but I'm just wondering. Like, I see, like, even 1943 at a really late point in their lives in hiding, they seem to they must have had shortages in money, in food, in painting materials, but they still seem to share that. So
Yeah.
which means, and I don't think it's an expression of them having, plenty of material. It just, I would guess that this is an expression of that, that they were both respecting each other as artists. Or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we know that in regard to Nussbaum, we know that he really did efforts to sell his works also in the United States. So he was writing letters with a family which was who was a friend of him, the Klein family, and in these letters he is mentioning works, sending them, and asking them for help to sell them in the United States. So this is from 1938. And also we know that Nussbaum did also applied works. For example, he painted ceramics and glasses and those things, plates and cups and everything, ashtrays, and these were sold on a marketplace in Brussels. and until 1942, maybe 1943, I'm not sure. This was with help of the Liddell family, especially Margaret Liddell. She sold them at the market. And in regard to Felka, what we know is that she earned money, she get money for commissioned works, as I presented you with, for example, the portrait of the little boy for the Horgenis family in Amsterdam. And yes, I think there must have been more, or there must be more of those works if they still exist. We don't know, but yeah.
Yeah. So one question Duke is asking about the 1940 self-portrait and whether we see shame in this self-portrait because of her, because of her behavior towards the Nussbaum family, I gather.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting comment. Shame is interesting. This self-portrait is not dated, so we date it in 1940, which also has to do with the situation she is in at that time. As I said in my lecture, there was a lot of pressure on the couple, and also she, as Schenkheim said, was ill, so she really was, her body was really stressed. So I think there could be lots of reasons why she is depicting herself in this with this gesture and in this mood. It would be maybe too much to connect it really to the to the story which I told with the conflict with the parents. It is possible, but I think we should keep it open.
Yeah. So Monica is asking how much more is known about Felka's relationship with Else Meitner. She was kind of in a similar situation of two artists being married to each other.
Yeah, that's true. But actually, we don't know anything about the contact between the two women. There is nothing. There was one day, I will just show the picture again. There was the idea of one of my colleagues, if this woman here on the left, it is the left, I think, the portrait of a young woman with her hand raised, if this could be a portrait of Else Meitner, but I'm not really sure. So yeah, but there are no documents, nothing that would tell us anything about it.
Because there were a lot of other exilees coming through Brussels and through Belgium in general, right? Like that. I remember a picture of Felix Nussbaum and Rudi Lesser, who was another Berlin artist. So I think, there was some, I don't know whether you can call it socializing, some, getting together, trying to figure out, what to do and how. And so I think that can also give some ideas of, how they lived and how their decisions came about. Maybe not. So Monica is asking I don't think you mentioned Nussbaum's interment in Saint-Cyprien. Was Felka also sent there?
Well, I mentioned it very shortly. While Felka at that time get in contact with the Mrs. Etienne at the Rue Archimede 22 with her neighbor here. So they were, Felka Platek as well as Felix Nussbaum were arrested, but Felka was able to go back go back to stay in Brussels, while Nussbaum was sent to this interned in the Saint-Cyprien camp. So and this time Felka stayed at the Rue Archimède and was in close contact here with Mrs. Etienne.
So it was basically just men taken to the internment camp?
Yes, as far as I know, only yes, only men.
Yeah, it's interesting to see this caricature by Felix Nussbaum, and at such a late point. I remember, you know, when you showed me Felix Nussbaum's work, that a lot, you know, he used a lot, like his early work very often was very funny. Like he had quite some humor that he somehow lost during the years of exile and hiding and so on. And so it's nice to see that for whatever reason, you know, why he created a caricature of her, but that he still did that, right?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, maybe you remember I quoted Fritz Steinfeld, Nussbaum's friend, who mentioned a portrait of him that Felka made in it was in the Berlin Times, and Steinfeld really liked it a lot because it was so academic, brilliant made, and he said, well, it's really best academy and I really see myself in here, but Nussbaum's was so funny that he didn't like it. So yeah, maybe in 1940, when Felix saw this portrait of Mrs. Etienne, maybe they really joked about it. It's maybe possible, you know, but also it's possible to, yeah, maybe to criticize her. We don't know. I tend to the idea that he made a joke, but
yeah, yeah. And his work is definitely like, you know, I can clearly see that she does more portraits, more I don't want to call it conventional, but more sellable work, I would think, maybe, even though there's a judgment in that, which I don't mean to have. But Nussbaum's work is more, yeah, he doesn't do these portraits, and maybe it was a conscious decision to really develop into different directions so they wouldn't step on each other's feet.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
she was really good in I think um, um, painting portraits which really are, you know, somehow the taste of the time. You know, it is really something very contemporary fashion. What she's doing. She has the skills, so she used it to earn money. But we see on the self-portraits from herself that she is in her free artistic language somebody completely different.
right, that's very true. And but her portraits, you kind of feel like you get to know that person she's portraying, and uh, um, even with that young child, that 2-year-old that she created a portrait of from a photograph, it's so alive, and it's really, I from what I know, it's really hard to depict children because they don't have features that are so, you know, defining.
Yeah.
So pretty, that's pretty amazing. And she decided not to copy the photograph really, but, you know, changed the depiction into something different. So it's pretty, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So Jan says she's more literal. Yeah, maybe that's, yeah, that's probably what I was looking for. So Monica is asking, is it possible, do you think, that Felka recognized the greater emotional power and intensity of Felix's work, and that this is one of the reasons, at least for her smaller output?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I understand it correctly, that she honored Nussbaum's work so much that she can you maybe repeat the question?
I think that's what it means. Whether it's possible that Felka recognized the greater emotional power and intensity of Felix's work, and that this is one of the reasons, at least for her smaller output.
Yeah, yes, it could be, maybe, yeah, it could be, because I mean, what we know from Steinfeld, Nussbaum's friend, he is the person who reported the most about Felka Platek. That's why I'm mentioning him so often. He also tells some stories that Felka said, oh, well, your Felix Nussbaum's works are much better than hers. But on the contrary, also Nussbaum says, oh, no, but you as an artist and your work is, they are maybe joking with it. I don't know. But I think that it was obvious for both of them that he is the one who want to develop, and he did it. And maybe it has also to do with her position as a woman, that she that she just subordinated herself.
Yeah, I think for sure, because she could, as a woman, she could create, but to sell as a woman was definitely much harder at that time than as a man, right? To be to defend your space on the marketplace, so to speak.
Yes, and it also, even if I don't know, but I guess also her, because she participated not in exhibitions, in group exhibitions or anything. Also, she didn't have a network, or she wasn't interesting for, maybe the art scene. I don't know. Maybe she didn't put any effort in it, or she was just not interesting. We don't know it, but at least she was not present as far as we know. She wasn't present in the Berlin art scene. I mean, Nussbaum collected the critics of his exhibition participations, but in regard to Nussbaum, to Felka, as I said in my lecture, there's only one note on her in an exhibition. And I think also this was more difficult for a woman.
Right.
Also in regard to the own self-confidence to work for it.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And Nussbaum might have been much better connected, right? So yeah, no, it's definitely an expression of the hardship, the hardship of being a woman, which yeah, very much was the case.
Yeah, yes, because she was talented. We can see it in her works, but yeah, to say it again, of course, on the other hand, we see that her work has not this deepness. Do you say deepness? I don't know. Has not this this quality as Nussbaum's work have, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
So what I found really, really interesting, I ended my lecture with it. It was really, really great if it would be possible to do more research in Felkar's origins from Poland. I mean, it is amazing that she came to Berlin. We don't know how. We don't know, with money or without. Is there family in Berlin from her or not? Is she alone? Why is she going to Berlin? Whom is she meeting? She is then going to the Living Funke school, so she wants to be an artist. And it would be really interesting to have more an idea about the context of her, where she is coming from, to understand why is she so brave to decide this.
Yeah. that's exactly, that's very exceptional that she made this step. I mean, a lot of Jews came from the east to Berlin, so you know, fleeing pogroms and looking for a modern life. So that's for sure. But as a woman to come as well on this at the same time, I mean, if she really wanted to be an artist or wanted to live a creative life, there was definitely no place in Poland for her, right? To learn to be an artist. I mean, I don't, at least I don't know of any art school in Poland of that time that would accept women.
Okay.
So that might have, yeah. So. But you're right. I mean, was there an attempt made, and is it just that there is no that there are no sources that were found, or does it just need somebody who really digs in, like
Yes,
you did?
it needs somebody speaking this Polish language and really to do research, I think, in Warsaw and in Poland,
Yeah.
and of course further on in Berlin, and yeah,
Yeah. So
that would be great.
yes. Yes. So hopefully, you know, hopefully this event helps, you know, getting people interested, and maybe helps finding someone who says, I want to dig deeper. And I want to thank you um, for your that you devoted your life to really Felix Nussbaum, because it feels like many people today know Felix Nussbaum, but I do know that when you started your work, that was not at all the case. So it's really your it's due to your lifelong, you know, devotion that we all know Felix Nussbaum now, and I'm very glad that you brought out Felka also, and Felka Platek, and hopefully, you know, this this research that you did will be carried further, and I'm glad that her work is being seen and being discussed now, and so thank you so much for your devotion.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Thank you as well.
Thank you so much. Be well, everyone, and take good care. Thank you. Bye.